I am Catherine Wilson, 28 years old, and a marketing manager at Wilson & Hayes Agency. For 5 years I poured my heart into this company, climbing toward a promotion that was finally within reach. My family once meant everything to me, until I discovered the ultimate betrayal. My parents told my boss I was mentally unstable, so my sister Diana could take my position. When I confronted my father, he just laughed and said, "Sweetie, it is just a job." If you have ever been betrayed by the people who should protect you most, let me know where you are watching from, and subscribe to see how I turned this nightmare around. I graduated from Northwestern University with a double major in marketing and business administration. College was not easy for me. Unlike many of my classmates whose parents fully funded their education, I worked 2 part-time jobs while maintaining a 3.9 GPA. My parents could have helped more financially but always insisted I needed to build character through hard work. Meanwhile, they helped my younger sister Diana with almost everything, claiming she was more sensitive and needed extra support. Despite these challenges, I excelled academically and landed an internship at Wilson & Hayes Marketing Agency the summer before my senior year. The internship turned into a job offer, and I started as a junior marketing associate 1 week after graduation. Wilson & Hayes was not just any agency. It was one of the top marketing firms in Chicago, with clients ranging from local businesses to Fortune 500 companies. Getting my foot in the door was a major accomplishment. The work environment was intense and competitive. The agency operated on a merit-based system where performance directly impacted advancement opportunities. Over my 5 years there, I consistently exceeded expectations. I brought in 4 major clients, led successful campaigns that increased revenue by 20%, and mentored junior team members. My performance reviews were stellar, with my direct supervisor Marcus Reynolds often commenting on my exceptional work ethic and innovative thinking. Every Sunday, I would have dinner at my parents' suburban home, where my achievements were acknowledged, but never truly celebrated. My father Richard, a successful insurance executive, would nod approvingly, but quickly shift conversations to Diana and her struggles. My mother Patricia was more subtle in her favoritism, always finding ways to comfort Diana while expecting me to simply handle whatever challenges came my way. Diana was 25 and had bounced between 3 different jobs in the past 2 years. She had the same educational opportunities I did, but opted for a less demanding college and graduated with an unimpressive GPA. Her work ethic was questionable at best, often calling in sick when she simply did not feel like going in. Each job ended with her either quitting because it was too stressful or being let go for performance issues. Currently, she was unemployed and living with our parents, who continually made excuses for her situation. "Not everyone is built for the corporate world like you are, Catherine," my mother would say, as if my success was some genetic anomaly rather than the result of dedication and hard work. Despite the subtle favoritism, I maintained a relatively close relationship with my family. They were still my parents, and Diana was still my sister. I thought we had a basic level of respect and support for each other, even if it was not perfectly balanced. Everything changed when Marcus called me into his office on a Tuesday morning in March. He closed the door, which was unusual, and asked me to sit down. "Catherine, I wanted to speak with you privately before making any official announcements," he said, his normally confident demeanor replaced with genuine excitement. "Sharon is retiring as Senior Marketing Director at the end of the quarter, and the executive team has been discussing potential replacements." My heart raced as I realized where this conversation was heading. "Your name is at the top of our list," he continued. "Your performance has been exceptional, and you have already been handling many of the responsibilities that would come with the promotion. We are still going through the formal process, including interviews with a few external candidates as policy requires, but I wanted you to know that you are our preferred choice." The Senior Marketing Director position was a significant step up. It came with a corner office, a 60% salary increase, a team of 8 direct reports, and a seat at the executive table. This was the opportunity I had been working toward for 5 years. That evening, I could barely contain my excitement as I drove to my parents' house for an impromptu dinner. I brought a bottle of champagne ready to celebrate with my family. When I arrived, Diana was already there, complaining about another failed job interview. "They asked for 5 years of experience," she whined. "How is anyone supposed to get experience if no one will hire them without experience?" When I shared my news about the potential promotion, the reaction was underwhelming. My father offered a brief, "That is great, honey," before returning to consoling Diana. My mother asked a few questions about the position, but seemed more concerned about whether the added responsibilities would be too much pressure for me. Diana's reaction was the most telling. Her forced smile did not reach her eyes, and she quickly changed the subject back to her job search. As the evening progressed, I noticed my parents and Diana having a hushed conversation in the kitchen. When I approached, they abruptly stopped talking and dispersed to different parts of the house. I left that night feeling deflated. What should have been a joyful family celebration had turned into yet another evening focused on Diana's problems. Little did I know that this was just the beginning of a betrayal that would shake the very foundation of my family relationships and professional life. The first signs that something was wrong appeared about a week after I shared my promotion news with my family. Rachel from accounting, who usually greeted me warmly in the morning, barely made eye contact when we passed in the hallway. Later that day, I noticed my team members exchanging glances during our weekly meeting when I was speaking. It was subtle, but as someone who prided herself on building strong workplace relationships, the shift was noticeable. By Thursday, the changes became more concerning. A strategy meeting for our biggest client, which I was supposed to lead, was rescheduled without my knowledge. When I asked Marcus about it, he vaguely mentioned something about restructuring the approach and changed the subject. I was also excluded from an executive lunch, where preliminary discussions about the department reorganization were taking place, despite the fact that I would potentially be heading that department soon. My friend and coworker Stephanie pulled me aside after the lunch. "Catherine, is everything okay with you?" she asked, genuine concern in her eyes. "What do you mean? Everything is fine," I replied, confused by her question. Stephanie hesitated before continuing. "There are some rumors going around. People are saying you might be going through some personal issues, mental health stuff." I was stunned. "What? That is absolutely not true. Where would anyone get that idea?" "I do not know," she said. "But Marcus has been in several closed-door meetings with HR this week, and your name keeps coming up." That afternoon, I took a detour past the HR department and noticed Marcus in the office of Valerie, the HR director. The door was partially open, and I could hear snippets of their conversation. The email was quite detailed, Valerie was saying. "If what her father says is true, we need to consider whether she is ready for this level of responsibility." "She has never shown any signs of instability here," Marcus responded. "Her work has been exemplary." "Family often sees things we do not," Valerie countered, "and liability is a serious concern if we ignore this kind of warning." I quickly walked away, my mind racing. My father had contacted my workplace about what? What could he possibly have told them that would make them question my mental stability? Over the next few days, the workplace isolation intensified. Projects I had been leading were reassigned. Conversations stopped when I entered rooms. Even Marcus, who had been my champion for years, became distant and evasive. When I could no longer stand the uncertainty, I confronted him directly. I knocked on his office door late Friday afternoon, when most of the staff had already left for the weekend. "Marcus, I need to know what is going on," I said firmly, after closing the door behind me. "There has been a clear change in how people are treating me, and I know it has something to do with rumors about my mental health." Marcus looked uncomfortable, shuffling papers on his desk. "Catherine, sometimes personnel matters are complicated. We have to consider many factors when making decisions about leadership positions." "Is this about what my father told you?" I asked directly. His head snapped up, surprise evident on his face. "You know about that?" "I know he contacted you. What I do not know is what he said." Marcus sighed deeply. Your father reached out to express concerns about promoting you to a high-stress position. He mentioned that you have had some significant episodes in the past, that you might not handle pressure well. He was very specific about incidents. My mind was reeling. What incidents? There are no incidents. He mentioned a nervous breakdown during your junior year of college, ongoing anxiety issues that you have been hiding from work, and a tendency toward emotional instability during family conflicts. He said your sister has been covering for you in family situations for years and was concerned the same might happen at work. I was speechless. None of this was true. My junior year had been stressful but completely manageable. I had never had any mental health issues beyond the normal stress anyone would experience in a demanding job. Marcus, none of that is true. I have never had a breakdown or any kind of mental health issue that would affect my work. My performance here speaks for itself. He looked genuinely conflicted. Catherine, I value your work tremendously, but when a family member reaches out with concerns like this, we have a responsibility to take it seriously. I left his office in a daze, unable to process the magnitude of my father's betrayal. But the worst was yet to come. The following Monday, I arrived early to gather my thoughts before facing another uncomfortable day at work. The office was nearly empty, and I noticed Marcus had left his computer unlocked when he stepped away from his desk, something he rarely did. A notification popped up on his screen, an email with the subject line, "Re-concerns about Catherine Wilson." The sender was my father. I know I should not have looked. It was a violation of privacy and company policy. But my career and reputation were on the line because of whatever lies my father had told. I quickly clicked on the email, and what I read shattered my world completely. "Dear Mr. Reynolds," the email began. "To follow up on our phone conversation, I wanted to provide more specific examples of Catherine's concerning behavior. As her father, this is extremely difficult to share, but I believe it would be irresponsible not to warn you before you make a significant promotion decision." The email went on to detail completely fabricated incidents, a supposed hospitalization for anxiety during college that never happened, claims that I had explosive episodes at family gatherings when things did not go my way, allegations that I had been secretly seeing a psychiatrist for years for emotional regulation issues. It even suggested that my driven work ethic was actually a manifestation of unhealthy obsessive tendencies. But the most devastating part came at the end. While we want to support Catherine's career, my wife and I believe a high-pressure executive position would be detrimental to her mental health. We suggest considering other candidates, including potentially her sister Diana, who has expressed interest in joining your company. Diana has a similar educational background, but a much more stable temperament and healthy approach to work-life balance. I have attached her resume for your consideration. The betrayal was complete. My father had not only sabotaged my promotion with lies, but was actively trying to get Diana hired in my place. I quickly closed the email and returned to my desk, my hands shaking uncontrollably. I barely made it to the bathroom before the tears started. Locking myself in a stall, I pressed my fist against my mouth to muffle the sobs that racked my body. The betrayal was so profound, so calculated, that I could barely process it. These were my parents, the people who were supposed to love and support me unconditionally. Instead, they had deliberately sabotaged my career to benefit my sister. I do not know how long I was in there before I heard Stephanie's voice. "Catherine, are you in here? Are you okay?" I tried to compose myself, splashing cold water on my face before opening the door. One look at my red, swollen eyes told her everything she needed to know. "What happened?" she asked, guiding me to a small seating area in the corner of the bathroom. Through broken sentences and fresh tears, I told her everything. The email, the lies, the suggestion that Diana take the position I had worked so hard for. "That is insane," Stephanie said, her expression a mixture of shock and outrage. "Everyone here knows how dedicated and level-headed you are. I have worked with you for 4 years, through dozens of high-pressure deadlines and difficult clients. Not once have you shown any sign of being unstable. It does not matter what is true, I said bitterly. The seed has been planted. Marcus and HR will always have this doubt about me now. Then we need to fight this, Stephanie insisted. I will go with you to HR right now. I will testify to your character and performance. With Stephanie's support, I composed myself enough to request an immediate meeting with Marcus and Valerie from HR. In the conference room, I laid out everything I had discovered. I know I should not have read the email on Marcus's computer, I acknowledged. That was wrong, and I accept whatever consequences come from that. But what my father told you is completely false. I have never been hospitalized for mental health issues. I have never had emotional outbursts at work or at home. I have never seen a psychiatrist. Marcus looked deeply troubled. Catherine, we would never make a promotion decision based solely on an email from a family member, but your father was very convincing, and he is a respected professional himself. Has my performance ever given you any reason to question my stability or capability? I asked directly. No, he admitted. Your work has been exceptional. Then, why would you even entertain these claims without discussing them with me first? Valerie interjected, her HR training evident in her measured response. When we receive information about an employee's well-being, especially from a family member, we have a duty to consider it. That said, we should have brought these concerns to you directly before taking any action. What action has already been taken? I asked, dreading the answer. Marcus and Valerie exchanged glances. We have interviewed several candidates for the senior marketing director position, Marcus said carefully, including your sister Diana, who came in yesterday. The room seemed to spin around me. Yesterday. You interviewed my sister for my promotion yesterday, based on my father's recommendation. We interview all qualified candidates, Valerie said. Her resume showed relevant education and some experience in marketing. She has been fired from 3 jobs in 2 years, I said, my voice rising, despite my efforts to stay calm. She has no significant marketing experience. The only reason she was interviewed is because my father is trying to hand her my position. The meeting concluded with vague assurances that they would review the situation and consider all factors in their decision. But I knew the damage was done. Even if they did not promote Diana, the doubt about me had been planted too deeply to fully eradicate. That evening I drove to my parents' house, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. Both of their cars were in the driveway, and Diana's was there too. Perfect. I could confront them all at once. I did not bother knocking, using my key to enter the house I had grown up in. They were in the dining room, the remains of dinner still on the table. Their laughter cut off abruptly when I appeared in the doorway. Catherine, my mother said, surprise evident in her voice. We were not expecting you tonight. Clearly, I replied coldly. You all seem to be celebrating something. My father's expression shifted from surprise to caution. Diana had a promising job interview yesterday. We were just having a small family dinner. At Wilson and Hayes, I said. It was not a question. The silence that followed confirmed everything. You contacted my boss, I continued, looking directly at my father. You told him I was mentally unstable. You made up lies about hospitalizations and breakdowns that never happened. Also, Diana could take the promotion I worked 5 years for. Now, Catherine, my father began in the patronizing tone he always used when he thought I was overreacting. The business world is complicated. Sometimes people need a little help getting opportunities. Help, you call? Destroying my professional reputation. Help. Do not be so dramatic, Diana interjected. It is just a job. I turned to her, barely containing my rage. Just a job. I have worked 60-hour weeks for 5 years. I brought in millions in revenue. I earned that promotion. And what has it gotten you? My father asked. You are always working. No boyfriend, few friends, hardly any time for family. Diana needs this opportunity more than you do. She is a single mother, trying to provide for your nephew. This was rich. Diana's son spent more time with my parents than with her. They had practically raised him while Diana went out with friends and dated a string of unsuitable men. So, you decided to sabotage me, to lie about my mental health. Do you have any idea the damage you have done? My mother finally spoke up, her voice soft but her words just as cutting. We were concerned about you, honey. You have always been so intense, so driven. It is not healthy. Concerned. If you were concerned, you would have talked to me, not gone behind my back to my employer with fabricated stories about my mental health. Diana had the audacity to look slightly guilty. They probably would not have hired me anyway. I was just exploring options. They were considering you for my position, I shouted, finally losing the tenuous grip on my composure. A position you are completely unqualified for. My father stood up, his patience clearly at an end. That is enough, Catherine. You have always had a flair for the dramatic. This is exactly the kind of emotional reaction we were worried about. Emotional reaction. You sabotaged my career. You betrayed me in the most fundamental way possible. He laughed, then actually laughed, as if my pain was amusing to him. Sweetie, it is just a job. There will be other opportunities. Diana needs this more than you do right now. That laugh, that dismissal of everything I had worked for, broke something in me. I realized in that moment that my family had never truly supported me. My success had always been despite them, not because of them. The next day I was called into another meeting with Marcus and Valerie. They suggested I take a voluntary leave of absence while they sorted through the situation. When I refused, they placed me on administrative leave, pending a professional evaluation. My access to company systems was restricted, and I was escorted out of the building like a criminal. Over the following weeks, the isolation was complete. My parents had told our extended family that I was having some emotional issues and needed space. Friends who heard rumors about my leave of absence reached out at first, but my shame and anger made it difficult to explain what had happened. Even Stephanie's support waned, as she became busy taking over some of my projects at work. I was alone, betrayed by the people I should have been able to trust most, and facing the potential end of the career I had worked so hard to build. The first week after being placed on leave, I barely left my apartment. The blinds remained drawn, dishes piled up in the sink, and I cycled between fits of rage and periods of numb disbelief. How could my own parents do this to me? The question played on repeat in my mind, never yielding a satisfactory answer. Sleep became elusive. When exhaustion finally claimed me, I would wake abruptly from dreams, where I was shouting at my family while they laughed and turned away. Food lost its appeal, and I subsisted mainly on delivery pizza and cereal, eaten directly from the box. By the second week, I realized I needed help. This betrayal had cut too deep for me to process alone. I found Dr. Cynthia Mercer, a therapist specializing in family trauma, and scheduled an emergency appointment. Dr. Mercer's office was warm and inviting, with soft lighting and comfortable furniture that seemed designed to put clients at ease. She was a woman in her 50s with kind eyes and a direct manner that I appreciated immediately. "What brings you here today, Catherine?" she asked after the initial paperwork was complete. The whole story poured out of me in a torrent of hurt and anger. Dr. Mercer listened attentively, occasionally asking clarifying questions, but mostly allowing me to release the emotions I had been containing. "What your family did was a profound betrayal," she said when I had finished. "Your reaction is not only normal but healthy. You are grieving the loss of the family you thought you had." Over the next several sessions, Dr. Mercer helped me examine patterns in my family dynamics that I had normalized or overlooked. The constant favoritism toward Diana was not just ordinary sibling rivalry, but a systemic imbalance that had shaped our entire family structure. "Your parents seem to view Diana as perpetually in need of rescue, Doctor," Mercer observed, "and they have cast you in the role of the self-sufficient one who does not need support. This dynamic likely began in childhood and has now reached its logical extreme." She guided me through memories I had suppressed or rationalized, my parents missing my high school valedictorian speech, because Diana had a minor cold. Them using my college fund to bail Diana out of debt, while telling me to apply for more scholarships. The constant pressure on me to include Diana in my activities and friend groups, regardless of how she behaved. I always thought that was just how families worked, I admitted during one session. The stronger sibling looks out for the weaker one. But that assumption created a no-win situation for you, Dr. Mercer pointed out. The more successful you became, the more you were expected to sacrifice for Diana. Your success became something to be redistributed rather than celebrated. As the therapy progressed, my thoughts increasingly turned to revenge. I fantasized about exposing my parents to our entire extended family, about finding a way to get Diana fired from any job she managed to secure, about making them feel the same pain and betrayal they had inflicted on me. I want them to suffer, I confessed to Dr. Mercer. I want them to lose something they value the way I lost my career and reputation. Those feelings are natural, she assured me, but acting on them would likely leave you feeling empty and potentially damage your own integrity. The question to consider is what outcome would actually help you heal and move forward. This question shifted my perspective. What did I truly want? Not just to hurt my family in return, but to reclaim my career, my reputation, and my sense of self-worth. I wanted to prove them wrong, not just about my mental stability, but about my strength and resilience. With this clearer vision, I began to develop a strategic approach rather than an emotional one. I started by documenting everything: the original conversation with Marcus, about the promotion, the timeline of my father's interference, the false claims he had made, and evidence from my academic and work history that contradicted each claim. I researched legal options regarding defamation and workplace discrimination. While I had a potential case, the legal battle would be lengthy, expensive, and emotionally draining. It would also permanently damage my professional reputation even if I won. The business world was small, and being known as someone who sued her employer and family would make future opportunities scarce. Instead, I decided to focus on rebuilding. I reached out to former professors who had mentored me, explaining my situation and asking for their guidance. I contacted former clients who had been pleased with my work, reconnecting under the guise of professional networking. I began building a support system separate from my family and immediate colleagues. Professor Linda Harrington, my former marketing ethics teacher, proved particularly helpful. Over coffee at a quiet cafe near campus, she listened to my story with growing indignation. "This is unconscionable," she said firmly. "Both your family's actions and your company's response. They had a duty to investigate these claims properly before taking any action against you." "I just do not know how to move forward," I admitted. "Even if I manage to keep my job, everyone there will always have these doubts about me." Professor Harrington considered this. "Perhaps keeping your current job should not be the goal. You have built valuable skills and relationships. Those can be transferred elsewhere somewhere without this cloud hanging over you." Her words sparked something in me. I had been so focused on defending my position at Wilson and Hayes that I had not considered whether that was still the best place for me. Did I want to remain in an environment where my reputation had been so severely damaged, working for people who had been so quick to believe the worst about me? That evening, I wrote out a new plan, one focused not on revenge or even restoration, but on reinvention. I would fight to clear my name at Wilson and Hayes, not to keep my job there, but to ensure the record was straight. Meanwhile, I would quietly explore other opportunities where I could start fresh, leveraging my accomplishments without the taint of false rumors. The turning point came when I realized that the most powerful response to my family's betrayal was not to sink to their level, but to rise above it. Success, genuine success built on my own merits, would be the most effective rebuttal to their belief that I was unstable or undeserving. For the first time since discovering my father's email, I slept through the night. The path forward was not easy, but it was clear. I would rebuild my career and my life, not out of spite, but out of respect for myself and the work I had done. The best revenge would not be destroying my family, but creating a life so successful and fulfilling that their betrayal became merely a footnote in my story, rather than its defining chapter. Armed with my new perspective and comprehensive documentation, I scheduled a formal meeting with Wilson and Hayes' Human Resources Department. I requested that both Valerie and a representative from the legal department be present. This was not just about clearing my name, it was about establishing a record of the company's mishandling of unsubstantiated claims about an employee. I arrived at the meeting dressed impeccably, in a navy blue suit that projected confidence and professionalism. I brought copies of my performance reviews for the past 5 years, letters of commendation from clients, and a detailed timeline of events since Marcus first mentioned the promotion opportunity. "Thank you for meeting with me." I began, my voice steady despite my nerves. "I understand that the company has been placed in a difficult position, but I believe there has been a serious lapse in proper procedure regarding the claims made about my mental health." I methodically presented the evidence contradicting each of my father's claims. My college transcripts showed no unexplained absences or drops in performance that would indicate a breakdown. Letters from professors and former employers attested to my consistent professionalism and emotional stability. I even included a letter from my primary care physician, stating that I had never been referred for psychiatric treatment. Additionally, I continued, I have consulted with an employment attorney who has indicated that acting on unverified claims from a third party, especially when those claims directly contradict 5 years of documented performance, could potentially constitute workplace discrimination. Valerie and the legal representative, a serious woman named Janet, exchanged concerned glances. "We appreciate your thoroughness," Catherine Valerie said carefully. "The company certainly wants to handle this situation appropriately." "I understand that," I replied, "which is why I am not pursuing legal action at this time. I simply want my professional reputation restored and the record corrected." After 2 hours of discussion, we reached an agreement. The company would conduct a formal investigation into the situation, including documenting that the claims against me were unsubstantiated. I would remain on paid leave during the investigation, but with a clear path to return. As I was leaving, Janet pulled me aside. "Off the record," she said quietly, "you should know that the interview with your sister did not go well. She was unprepared for basic questions about marketing strategy and client management." I thanked her for the information, feeling a small measure of vindication. Diana's lack of qualifications was becoming apparent to others, not just me. While the investigation proceeded, I took Professor Harrington's advice and began exploring other opportunities. I updated my resume and portfolio, emphasizing quantifiable achievements and client testimonials. I reached out to my professional network, being careful to frame my current situation as exploring new challenges rather than fleeing a toxic workplace. Through a former client who had moved to Taylor & Brooks, a competing agency, I secured an interview with their executive team. The firm had recently won several major accounts and was looking to expand their leadership team. The position would be a step up from what I had at Wilson & Hayes, with more responsibility and creative control. During the interview, the question I dreaded inevitably arose. "I notice you are currently on leave from Wilson & Hayes," said Elizabeth Taylor, one of the founding partners. "May I ask why?" I had prepared for this moment, knowing honesty was essential, but also aware that the full story might raise concerns. "I believe in transparency," I began. "My father, without my knowledge, contacted my employer with false claims about my mental health in an attempt to help my sister secure a position there. The company placed me on leave while investigating these claims, which have since been found to be unsubstantiated." There was a momentary silence around the table. "That is an unusual situation," Elizabeth finally said. "How have you handled it professionally?" "I have worked through proper channels with HR and legal to clear my name, maintaining professionalism throughout. I have also used this time to reflect on what I truly want in my career and the type of organization I want to be part of. That reflection led me here." What followed was a candid discussion about professional ethics, family dynamics, and resilience. Rather than shying away from my situation, the executive seemed impressed by my handling of it. By the end of the interview, we were discussing specific ideas for their newest client campaigns. 3 days later, I received a call from Elizabeth, offering me the position of Executive Creative Director, with a 30% higher salary than what the Senior Marketing Director role at Wilson & Hayes would have paid, plus a signing bonus and creative control over new client acquisitions. We were impressed, not just by your portfolio, but by your integrity in handling a difficult situation, Elizabeth explained. That is the kind of leadership we value here. I negotiated one additional term. A public announcement of my new role would be distributed through industry channels. It was important to me that my professional reputation be visibly restored. With my new position secured, I returned to Wilson & Hayes for a final meeting. The investigation had concluded finding no evidence to support any of my father's claims. Marcus looked genuinely remorseful. "I owe you an apology, Catherine," he said as we sat in his office. "I should have approached you directly about your father's email rather than involving HR immediately. Your work has always been exemplary, and I allowed outside influence to cloud my judgment. I appreciate that," I said, feeling a complex mixture of vindication and sadness. This had been my professional home for 5 years, and part of me was grieving its loss, even as I looked forward to my new opportunity. "We would like to offer you the Senior Marketing Director position," Marcus continued, "with a additional compensation package to recognize the distress this situation has caused." I smiled, appreciating the irony. "Thank you, but I have accepted a position elsewhere. I will be starting as Executive Creative Director at Taylor & Brooks next month." The shock on his face was evident. Taylor & Brooks was a direct competitor, and my departure with my client relationships and institutional knowledge would be a significant loss for Wilson & Hayes. "I see," he said carefully. "That is quite an advancement. Congratulations." As I prepared to leave, he asked hesitantly, "What about your sister? She has been coming in for training sessions with the team." "That is between Diana and the company," I replied. "But I would suggest carefully verifying her credentials and capabilities. In my experience, she struggles with consistent performance and accountability." My last act at Wilson & Hayes was to send an email to Stephanie and the few colleagues who had supported me, thanking them for their friendship and inviting them to stay in touch. I did not mention my new position, knowing that industry news would spread it soon enough. As I walked out of the building for the last time, I felt lighter than I had in weeks. The professional part of my response was complete. I had cleared my name, secured a better position, and done it all without compromising my integrity. Now I had to face the personal aspect, my family. News of my new position spread quickly through industry channels. The press release from Taylor & Brooks highlighted my experience and achievements, positioning my hire as a significant acquisition for the agency. Several marketing blogs picked up the story, particularly noting my rapid ascension to an executive role at one of the city's most innovative firms. The first contact from my family came from my mother, a text message that read, simply, "Saw the news about your new job. Call when you can." No congratulations, no acknowledgement of what they had done, just an expectation that I would reach out as if nothing had happened. I did not respond. 3 days later, my father called. I let it go to voicemail. "Catherine, it is your father. We need to talk about this new job of yours. Sounds like things worked out even better than we expected. See, sometimes a little push is what you need. Give us a call when you can. Sunday dinner is still on." His audacity was breathtaking. He was attempting to take credit for my success, framing his betrayal as some kind of tough love that had ultimately benefited me. It confirmed everything Dr. Mercer and I had discussed about my family's distorted dynamics. I continued my therapy sessions, now focusing on establishing healthy boundaries with my family. Dr. Mercer helped me work through the complicated emotions of grieving the relationship I thought I had, while accepting the reality of the one that actually existed. You do not owe them forgiveness or reconciliation, she reminded me. Healthy boundaries might mean limited contact, or even no contact for a period of time. Diana was the next to reach out her message, a strange mixture of congratulations and self-pity. Congrats on the fancy new job. Must be nice to always land on your feet. Things are not going great for me at Wilson and Hayes. They keep saying my work is not up to standard. Could use some advice if you are not too busy being successful. I showed the message to Dr. Mercer in our next session. What do you make of this? She asked. It is classic Diana, I replied. Superficial acknowledgement of my achievement immediately followed by making it about her problems. She is not taking responsibility for her performance issues, and she is still expecting me to bail her out. And how does that make you feel? I considered the question carefully. Sad mostly. Sad that she cannot see how inappropriate it is to ask for my help after what she participated in. Sad that she is still stuck in this pattern. But also, free. I do not feel responsible for fixing this for her anymore. That realization was powerful. For my entire life, I had felt an obligation to smooth Diana's path to help her succeed, to protect her from the consequences of her actions. That burden was no longer mine to carry. Instead of responding to Diana's message, I focused on building my new life. I threw myself into my role at Taylor & Brooks, quickly establishing myself as a creative force within the agency. I developed genuine friendships with colleagues who appreciated my contributions without the baggage of my family drama. I also reconnected with extended family members who had been fed my parents' version of events. My Aunt Julia, my father's sister, invited me to lunch one weekend. I have been hearing some concerning things from your parents, she said carefully. They mentioned you were having some emotional difficulties. I took a deep breath and told her the truth, showing her the press release about my new position and explaining what my parents had actually done. Aunt Julia was horrified. That is not the story they have been telling everyone, she said. They said you had some kind of breakdown after being passed over for a promotion, and that they were very worried about you. They created the situation they are describing, I explained. They sabotaged my promotion, and then painted my justified anger as a mental health crisis. Over the following weeks, I had similar conversations with other family members, not to turn them against my parents, but to ensure they understood my side of the story. Many were shocked by what my parents had done, though some still tried to excuse their behavior as misguided attempts to help Diana. Meanwhile, I heard through industry contacts that Diana was struggling significantly at Wilson and Hayes. Marcus had apparently contacted her supervisors with concerns about her qualifications after learning the full extent of my father's deception. She had been placed on a performance improvement plan and was in danger of being let go. My mother began leaving increasingly desperate voicemails, trying different angles to re-establish contact. Catherine, honey, we miss you at Sunday dinners. Your sister is having a hard time at work. She could really use your guidance. Your father did not mean to hurt you. He was just trying to help Diana. I maintained my distance, focusing instead on building a support network that was healthy and reciprocal. I joined a book club, started taking weekend pottery classes, and volunteered at a marketing mentorship program for underprivileged youth. For perhaps the first time in my adult life, I was developing an identity completely separate from my family dynamics. 3 months into my new position, I was invited to speak at an industry conference where I knew many of my former colleagues would be present. My presentation on innovative marketing strategies for emerging technologies was well received, and afterward several Wilson and Hayes employees, including Stephanie, approached me. You look amazing, Stephanie said, embracing me warmly. Taylor & Brooks is lucky to have you. Thank you, I replied genuinely, happy to see her. How are things at Wilson and Hayes? Different without you, she admitted. Marcus regrets how everything happened. And your sister? Well, it is okay, you can tell me. She was let go last week. She just could not handle the client load or the deadlines. People kept comparing her work to yours, which did not help. I felt a complex mix of emotions at this news. A part of me, the part still hurt by her betrayal, felt vindicated. But another part felt sad that Diana had been placed in a position she was destined to fail in, largely due to our parents' misguided efforts. Later that evening, I spotted Marcus across the hotel bar where the conference reception was being held. After a moment's hesitation, I approached him. "Catherine," he said, genuine pleasure in his voice. "Your presentation today was outstanding." "Thank you," I replied. "How have you been?" "Honestly, dealing with the fallout from what happened with you. It was a wake-up call for how we handle personnel issues. We have instituted new protocols for verifying any third-party claims about employees." "That is good to hear," I said, realizing I no longer harbored anger toward him. He had been manipulated by my father, and while his response had been flawed, he had ultimately recognized his mistake. "I heard about Diana," I added. He looked uncomfortable. "Yes, that was unfortunate. She was clearly not ready for that level of responsibility. I should have recognized that from the beginning." We parted on cordial terms, and I returned to the conference with a sense of closure about my time at Wilson and Hayes. My professional reputation had been restored, and I was building something new and exciting at Taylor & Brooks. In my next session with Dr. Mercer, I shared these developments. "You have made remarkable progress," she observed. "You have established healthy boundaries, rebuilt your career, and developed a stronger sense of self outside your family relationships. The question now is, what kind of relationship, if any, do you want with your parents and sister moving forward?" It was a question I had been contemplating for weeks. The hurt was still there, the breach of trust profound, but they were still my family for better or worse. "I am not ready for regular contact," I admitted. "But I think eventually, I might be open to a relationship with clear boundaries and expectations. One where I am not responsible for fixing everything for Diana, and where my parents respect me as an adult with my own life." "That sounds like a healthy approach," Dr. Mercer said. "Remember that forgiveness, if you choose, it is for your benefit, not theirs. It does not mean forgetting or allowing the same patterns to continue." As I left her office that day, I felt a newfound sense of peace. The betrayal had been painful, but it had forced me to confront and break free from unhealthy family dynamics that had constrained me for years. In a strange way, my parents' attempt to sabotage me had ultimately led to my liberation. One year, after accepting the position at Taylor & Brooks, I stood on a stage in New York City, accepting an industry award for a campaign my team had developed for a major tech client. The campaign had increased their market share by 25% and had been lauded for its innovative approach to consumer engagement. "This award belongs to the incredible team at Taylor & Brooks," I said into the microphone, genuinely moved by the recognition. "Thank you for believing in my vision and helping bring it to life." From my vantage point on stage, I could see former colleagues from Wilson and Hayes in the audience, including Marcus, who nodded respectfully in my direction. The industry was small, and word had spread about my success at Taylor & Brooks. I had been promoted to Chief Creative Officer 6 months after joining the firm, becoming the youngest person to hold that position in the company's history. After the ceremony, I checked my phone and found a text from my mother. "Saw online about your award. Congratulations. Your father and I are proud of you." It was the first contact I had responded to in months. "Thank you," I wrote back, keeping it simple. The truth was, my parents had reached out multiple times over the past year, especially after Diana lost her job at Wilson and Hayes. She had remained unemployed for several months before finding a position at a smaller firm, one better suited to her experience level. Without the pressure of filling my shoes, she was apparently doing adequately there. My parents' financial situation had changed dramatically in recent months. My father's company had downsized, and at 58, he had found himself suddenly unemployed. After decades of living beyond their means, they had significant debt and few savings. Pride had initially prevented them from reaching out, but eventually, financial necessity overcame that barrier. The voicemail from my father had been difficult to listen to. His voice, usually so confident and authoritative, sounded strained and elderly. "Catherine, I know we have had our differences, but your mother and I are in a difficult position right now. I have lost my job and the mortgage. Well, we could use some advice. You have always been good with finances. Please call when you can." I had not called immediately. Instead, I discussed it with Dr. Mercer in our now monthly check-in sessions. "How does their request make you feel?" she asked. "Conflicted," I admitted. "Part of me wants to help, because they are still my parents. Another part sees the irony in them coming to me for help after everything they did. And honestly, a small part feels vindicated that they now need me, instead of the other way around." "Those are all natural reactions," she assured me. "The question is, what response aligns with your values and boundaries now?" After careful consideration, I did call them back. I did not offer financial assistance, which would have reinforced unhealthy dynamics, but I did provide practical advice about budgeting, job searching, at my father's age, and potentially downsizing their home. The conversation was awkward but civil, with an underlying tension neither of us directly addressed. My mother called the following week. "Your father is too proud to say it, but your advice was helpful. He has an interview next week with a smaller insurance firm. It would be a step down, but it is something." "I am glad to hear that," I replied, maintaining the polite but distant tone that now characterized our interactions. "Catherine," she continued hesitantly, "we miss you. What happened last year? Your father thought he was doing what was best for everyone. By lying about my mental health, by trying to give Diana a position she was not qualified for. He made a mistake," she conceded. Perhaps the first time either of my parents had come close to an actual apology. "We both did. We never thought it would affect you so much. You have always been so strong, so capable of handling anything." "That does not make it okay to sabotage me," I pointed out. "And it does not help Diana in the long run either. She needs to find her own path, not take mine." There was a long pause before my mother spoke again. "I understand that now. Diana is doing better in her new job. It is more her speed, less pressure, and she is taking some classes to improve her skills." It was a small step toward acknowledging the reality of Diana's capabilities rather than the inflated version they had always maintained. Progress, however, minimal. At my next therapy session, I shared these developments with Dr. Mercer. "It sounds like there has been a shift in the family dynamic," she observed. "Your success and independence have changed how they relate to you." "I think my father losing his job was a wake-up call," I replied. "For the first time, he is vulnerable in a way he cannot hide or control." "And how do you feel about potentially rebuilding some form of relationship with them?" I considered this carefully. I am open to it, but on new terms. I will never again allow them to interfere in my career or personal choices, and I will not be responsible for fixing Diana's problems. If they can respect those boundaries, maybe we can have some kind of relationship. Over the following months, a new pattern emerged. I occasionally joined Sunday dinners, though not weekly as before. Conversations remained somewhat superficial, focusing on safe topics rather than deeper issues. My father found a new job less prestigious and lower paying than his previous position. The experience seemed to have humbled him somewhat, though glimpses of his old controlling nature still surfaced occasionally. Diana and I established a cautious, sisterly relationship. Without our parents actively pitting us against each other, we discovered we could interact as adults with separate lives rather than as competitors. She seemed genuinely interested in my career advice, now that it came without the pressure of constant comparison. At Taylor & Brooks, my professional life flourished. I built a team that shared my values of creativity, integrity, and mutual support. I mentored younger staff members, particularly women, navigating the often challenging dynamics of the marketing world. My experience had made me especially attuned to office politics and the importance of establishing clear boundaries. At an industry conference in Chicago, I unexpectedly ran into Marcus again. He was now working for a different agency, having left Wilson and Hayes several months after I did. "Catherine," he greeted me warmly. "Your keynote yesterday was brilliant. You have built quite a reputation in the industry." "Thank you," I replied. "I heard you moved to Blackwell Communications. How is that going?" "It is good. Different culture, more aligned with my values. What happened with you was a wake-up call for me. I realized I had been prioritizing the wrong things in my leadership approach." We chatted amicably about industry trends and mutual acquaintances. Before parting, he hesitated, then added, "I truly am sorry about what happened. I should have trusted what I knew about you from years of working together rather than what someone else claimed." "I appreciate that," I said sincerely. "In a strange way, it all worked out for the best. I am happier at Taylor & Brooks than I ever was at Wilson and Hayes." As I reflected on the past year while flying home, I realized how profoundly the experience had changed me. The betrayal had been painful beyond measure, but it had forced me to recognize toxic patterns I might otherwise have continued to tolerate indefinitely. It had pushed me to establish healthier boundaries, to value myself independently of my family's approval, and to build a life based on my own terms. I had learned that success was not just about career achievements or financial rewards, but about integrity, self-respect, and surrounding myself with people who valued me authentically. I had discovered that sometimes the most painful experiences can lead to the most significant growth, and that resilience comes not from avoiding hurt, but from learning to move through it with grace and purpose. Most importantly, I had learned that my worth was not dependent on my family's recognition or approval. It was inherent, unchangeable, and defined by me alone. As the plane descended toward home, I felt a sense of peace that had been absent for much of my life. The journey had been difficult, but I had emerged stronger, wiser, and more authentically myself than ever before. I wonder if you have ever experienced a betrayal that ultimately led to positive change in your life. How did you handle it, and what did you learn from the experience? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and if this story resonated with you, please like and subscribe for more stories about overcoming family challenges and finding your own path. Thank you for listening to my journey, and remember that sometimes the most painful moments can become the foundation for your greatest strength and happiness.